Good day everyone and welcome to another vlog for the Exodus 7 to 12 KJV project. Now before we actually get to the project stuff for this week, I want to talk to you guys about lip syncing. Now most of you guys know that I've done a video on lip syncing, which you can find on the end screen or you can find it in the description. Just a heads up, it is a very long tutorial because I also let you create a character that you can do the lip sync with. If you already have a character that you want to work with, just use the annotation that skips to the part where we get to that fun stuff. Okay, so first I want to show you guys the example I did for that lip sync tutorial. You can see this particular mouth animation in the opening and in the thumbnail. It is a short section of Genesis 1 where I tested out this method first. So I'm going to show you guys that video and then I'm going to talk about a different plugin that I tried out this week. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Gotta love that. That's just so cool. And now for the plugins. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, Fill the man's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in his sack's mouth. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and his corn money. And he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their asses. And when they were gone out of the city, and not yet far off, Joseph said unto his steward, Up, follow after the men, and when thou dost overtake them, say unto them, Wherefore have you rewarded evil for good? Now that looks also cool, but there are a few issues with this particular plugin. Primarily, it tries to close the mouth between every word. It doesn't quite flow as naturally as I would like it to flow, but it's certainly not unusable. I don't think that it's horrible. This particular plugin is the one that comes with the MHX2 format with Make Human. When you import a file, you make sure that it includes the face shapes. Now, the face shapes are these what they call vismes or visemes or whatever the case might be. Some people spell it with an E, some people leave the E out, whatever the case might be. That you can use to animate manually, or you can have Papagayo do the DAT file for you so that you can simply align the words with the audio and export that, import it into Blender, and your mouth is synced up. So you can use this method or you can use the one I put in the description. I do feel that the method that God gave me, the one that I did the tutorial with, is more accurate, but if you don't want to put in that level of time, and if you're satisfied with something like this, then I would say stick with this. It's really not complicated to do. It's as simple as adding the face shapes, making sure your file is ready, adding the words to Papagayo, link in the description to that website, and making sure that your audio and your video is lined up, and that when you export that your audio is enabled. So let's just quickly go through that so I can just show you where to turn it on, because by default it is set to none. When your output is set to video and you go to encoding, which only comes on when you actually use video. See, there it's back. There at the bottom you get audio codec. Now depending on which format you choose here, this may look a little bit different, but primarily audio will be at the bottom and it's usually set to none. So you need to choose which format you choose. Okay, so with our lip syncing example done, we can talk about this. So this would be the last frame that I added to the storyboarding project, the rough cut. And last week I talked about the other frames and I took you guys through them and some issues here and there. So that's not the biggest issue, but what I do want to show you guys is the intro, and then I'm going to let this last 5 minutes or so just play through. It's just short of 5 minutes actually. So I'm going to show you guys the intro, which is something I worked on last night. It's not the final, but I do want to do something that's a mix between Egyptian and Israelite, Hebrew, that sort of thing. In something like that, that's something I have in mind. Or to make it like an anime intro, which would be like with a few dialogue pieces and a few action shots in between, and of course then followed by the title. I don't want it to be super long, I just want it to look cool. So, without further ado, here is the intro. So obviously you guys can tell that I'm going for that candle lit or fire lit kind of situation with the flickering. And of course the title will go over that. Very short, very sweet. That's where it comes down to. Well, I mean, plagues can only be so sweet, but you get the point. Anyway. But this is not necessarily going to be the final. I'm just looking at an idea. Now, I do feel that this one is a bit cliche, and a lot of Egyptian stuff opens in a very similar vein. But because this is not, how do I put this, just about Egypt, it's definitely not something that I want to go for as is. I would like to do something a little bit more unique in a way. For example, something that just came to mind is to do like a split screen where I would have hieroglyphics coming down or going up, and Paleo Hebrew going sideways or something, something along those lines. Just not distracting, slow moving, that will still allow the title to shine. But, that'll still be brainstormed throughout this week. But I really, really, really like this one. It's just so cool. Unfortunately, it's not yellow. It's kind of blackish at the moment. Fire would make it more orangey kind of look. Anyway, so let's get to where we were just now. Okay, so the first thing you're going to see is the magicians trying to make the same thing happen and failing to do so, and they're going to say this is the finger of God, but because the screen rotates, it may be a little bit difficult to see that. So I might, for the final, limit the rotation so you're actually able to follow along a little bit better, bearing in mind that these are stick figures, so it is kind of hard to tell who is who.
This is the finger of God. Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses, and the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and thy people, tomorrow shall this sign be.
The land was corrupted by reason of the swarm of flies. And Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron, and said,
Go yet, sacrifice to your God in the land. It is not meet so to do, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, and sacrifice to the Lord our God, as he shall command us. I will let you go, that ye may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, only ye shall not go very far away, entreat for me. Behold, I go out from thee, and I will entreat the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people, tomorrow, but let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully any more in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. Go in unto Pharaoh, and tell him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if thou refuse to let them go, and wilt hold them still, behold, the hand of the Lord is upon thy cattle which is in the field, upon the horses, upon the asses, upon the camels, upon the oxen, and upon the sheep, there shall be a very grievous murrain. And the Lord shall sever between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of Egypt, and there shall nothing die of all that is the children's of Israel. Tomorrow the Lord shall do this thing in the land.
And all the cattle of Egypt died, but of the cattle of the children of Israel died not one.
There we go. So a few things. This little, well, let me just get that. It's 1.3 something. This one with the flies. This one I can actually put into the section where Moses is actually talking to Pharaoh. This can be like an overlay, because this is like hieroglyphical. Love that new word. Woo. Hieroglyphic type view. So that would be very cool. And this would be also like an overlay where Moses is talking and he's saying, 3 days. And this would be off to the side, with a clear background, or it could be just like a split screen type thing. I would prefer this to be like an overlay, sort of like a newscaster type situation. That would be very cool. And, this was the awesomest thing. While I was working on this, I felt led to have it animated as Moses walks out. And when I first tried to flip the image, it was not aligned enough to do that. It would look like he's dancing around on a single foot, like flipping from side to side, jumping almost. Where is it? Where is it? They're walking out. There we go. That. Oh, that was so cool. What I did was I cropped it, or I used transform. I don't recall exactly. Let's quickly see. I just used cropped, okay. And then I animated the flip X tick box over there. As you can see, look at that. Yeah. That was just so cool. At least some cool animation within the storyboards. Like so, and then pull it down. Okay. There are quite a few ways to actually show day and night passing and so on. It's actually very cool. Now this one I'm a little bit unsure of in terms of how it may look and what to focus on, because I do want the viewer to have an idea that this is what Pharaoh is seeing. So it may be that I just show it in the eye, though I do think that's a little small. But it is a possibility to show these, this sort of thing. But I do want it to fade off and be his eye just before fade out. Possibly a little bit longer than that. Okay, so then we're moving on. I used this frame because I wanted it to really show that Moses left Pharaoh first before God spoke to him again and tell him go in and speak to Pharaoh, because I mean you have to be away from Pharaoh to go in and speak to Pharaoh. So then he listens and he goes, and not to be too repetitive, I felt actually more led to do it than just wanted, that it not be a repeat of the same thing over and over and over and over again visually, because that creates kind of a sense of boredom. So instead, while he is speaking to Pharaoh, I show the way there, almost like taking the scenic route, and then showing his reaction while he's listening, and of course fading to him actually speaking. And it's kind of like a progressive move from being there and actually being present while he's speaking. We'll see how that turns out, because I don't want it to be a distraction. I don't want it to feel super awkward. At the moment, it creates kind of like a visual contrast with the audio, but I don't want it to be a distraction. I want it to be a good thing. Okay, so these are supposed to be viruses, but I have to do some digging first to see what I can do in terms of that. Otherwise, I would just turn these into cattle with a little bit of land here and the hand coming down over them. That sort of thing. And of course, then Moses speaks and he says, don't act deceitfully or something, and let the people go. And it's going to be cattle dying, and tomorrow this sign shall be. And he gets up. This was fun to color in. It didn't take long, but it was fun to do. And he sends, and they count them. This is one where I also want to use hieroglyphics, because I want to suggest what Pharaoh would have done without adding information, because it's not a contradiction, as I talked about in the previous one, where with the hail plague, Pharaoh actually had cattle again, even after all his cattle died in this plague. So it's a very difficult kind of thing to kind of wrap your mind around in a way. But I want to show that Pharaoh would go back and tax cattle and possibly even seize cattle to replenish his own lack of cattle. So check the links in the description to the previous post, the previous vlog, and you can find the links to all that information there. So I might shorten this sequence over here a little bit, because I do feel that it goes on for a little bit. So I might take this frame out and just have him, do I don't want to say curtsy. It has to be more like a bow. They did wear skirts, but I don't think they curtsied. So he can just give a bow and head off, So I might just knock this one out and make it a little shorter. And of course, then he hardens his heart, refuses to listen, and that's where we're at. So I didn't get to draw any new ones, but this took a long time to do. But it was fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. You can see it as sort of like a quick preview. Have a great one, and God bless you.